Hello everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney and welcome to another episode of a new series that I did a couple weeks ago about just basically discussing why I don't necessarily ship two characters together in any sort of anime, manga, or video game that I've ever played or just managed to at least at some point experience in my life. And the reason why I want to make videos like this is because while I do love analyzing and talking about like other ships, I believe that at least as a shipper, I should also give, my reasons to why I don't ship specific characters together and, at least give you my personal view as to why. Now, in these videos, you are more than welcome to disagree with me. You don't actually have to try to convince me that I am wrong because, it's all based off whatever it is that you enjoy, right? Everyone ships differently. So while you may not agree with what I'm going to say in this video, that's perfectly fine. You are allowed to ship whoever you wish, right? But at least I want to give you at least a reason why I don't ship, these certain ships. And we're going to stick with One Piece because there's really only one other One Piece ship that I don't necessarily ship. I really have no other ship that I really ship in One Piece. But this is another ship that occurs within One Piece that really goes against the ship that I ship. And while I did do a Luffy Hancock one, this time we're going to go with Sanji Nami. This is another ship that kind of rivals against Luffy Nami. And, also involves the shipping war that occurs in the shipping fandom in One Piece. Now, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. And what I mean by that is try not to tell you why, like, Luffy Nami is better than Sanji Nami. But it's probably going to occur at some point. But I also want to be transparent. And one of the things I want to be transparent about is that one of the reasons why I don't like Sanji Nami is because I dislike Sanji as a character, right? I think his character has some good qualities, but it's hard for me to enjoy those good qualities without really taking a look at the negative qualities that he also has. And don't get me wrong, I truly believe that he is a genuinely nice person who is close friends with everybody, close friends with Nami. He doesn't hate Nami. Nami doesn't hate him. I know there are arguments over that, right? And there's also arguments about, Sanji not being kind. I think he's kind to an extent. He's definitely mostly kind to female characters, but he can also be kind to other people as well, such as, Momo. He's kind to Luffy at points. The only person he's probably not kind to is Zoro, but, that's the whole Zoro-Sanji rivalry happening. But one of the major reasons why I don't ship Sanji Nami is because I just don't like Sanji's negative qualities. I think his negative qualities go against and really combat against Nami's qualities. Or Nami's traits. Or, like, Nami's preferences that we at least know from the story. And one of those traits is that Nami doesn't like perverts. She does not like perverts whatsoever. Sanji, as much as a genuinely nice guy that he is, he as a white knight and one who always protects women no matter what, he has a perverted side to him. And that perverted side to him, to me, works against him getting paired up with Nami. Because it literally goes against what Nami likes in a person, at least from what we know. She has stated before that she doesn't like perverts. She doesn't like when Sanji or Brook peep on her, right? She called him one of the most untrustworthy persons after he literally turned invisible to essentially, some will argue that he went there to defend Nami and Robin, but reality is he's been dreaming about the day he will go into a bathhouse, turn invisible, a dream that he literally talked and told to Absalom, who had the invisibility fruit, that he wished he had that fruit to peep on women's bathrooms. And he did it anyway. And Nami was furious about it. Literally to the point that she beat him up really badly and told him he was the most untrustworthy person here in Wano, or in that room. So that's just part of like why their personality traits just contradict with each other. Right? You cannot expect me to ship, two characters together when one of those characters I really enjoy and I'm a huge fan of doesn't like a really a really strong aspect of other characters, and one aspect that Sanji has, right? And I just can't ship them at all because it just they just clash. The personality traits, how they view like certain like traits in other people, it just clashes with them, right? And it just it's that's just like one of the main reasons why I just don't. I feel like Sanji's personality traits and the way he's kind of overbearing on Nami can be something that I just not can be something, but it is something that I just don't enjoy. And to me, it's a little bit overbearing because it stunts Nami's growth in certain situations. And what I mean by that is that there are moments when he is this white knight, and I, appreciate, Sanji protecting Nami. I think that's really kind of him to do so, but he does it so often, right? To the point where I'm just like, allow Nami to defend herself. Allow Nami to showcase some of her fighting abilities, right? Part of that is Oda's writing, which sometimes infuriates me. Because the perfect example is literally in Elbaf, where she literally could defeat the giant cat that was chasing after her. Yet for some reason he never did that. Probably to just give the Monster Trio a cool moment together, right? But she could have definitely handled that giant cat. That giant cat is not a big issue at all to her, especially after defeating Ulti. I get it, there's a whole little thing about like Big Mom dealing a huge blow on Ulti, but she still beat Ulti. Right? She has Zeus, so it just... Unless she didn't have Zeus and it... did she have Zeus? No, she did have Zeus. No, did she? I don't remember anymore. But my point is, Sanji trying very hard to be this white knight towards her stunts her growth a little bit. Right? And I can give you another example. This is one of the bigger examples why I just cannot ship him, because to me, this was Sanji at one of his worst moments. And this was during Fishman Island, during the scene where Jinbei is confessing about like how he feels responsible for letting Arlong loose and making Nami suffer for so long, right? After he tells the story and the flashback, and asks for forgiveness from Nami and stuff like that, Sanji speaks up, right? And he tells Jinbei essentially that if he is really responsible, if he's really the one at fault for letting Arlong loose and making Nami suffer, he should go unalive himself, right? Some people will see that as like Sanji defending his friend, which is true. It is Sanji defending his friend and being angry, for his friend. But the problem for me with that situation isn't necessarily how much the good meaning he had in what he did. It's not letting Nami be the one to decide for herself. She eventually did, but she had to tell Sanji to stop. To me, that's not allowing the character to grow. Whenever I think of ships, I think of them as a way where both of these characters can somehow allow the other to grow. Allow the other to have and gain character development and gain that emotional connection between them. Similar to how like you always want to root and you always want to bring out the best out of the individual that you are in love with. You want to be the best for them. You want them to grow and get stronger, not just physically but emotionally. And you want to be the one that helps bring that out of them. That moment doesn't help Nami get that growth. She eventually does the right thing and apologizes and forgives Jinbei because it's not his fault. Arlong's the one that made her life a living hell, right? And she forgives Jinbei. That just showcases just how kind Nami is, right? But Sanji didn't have to say anything. I think that was like one of the biggest mistakes Oda could have done there. And I get it. Sanji was literally mad for his friend. I get that. I really do. But allow Nami herself to be the one to forgive Jinbei without any of the other members of the Straw Hats saying anything, right? You had Chopper, Luffy, Frankie there, and none of them spoke up. None of them told Jinbei, that he was wrong, that he should go unalive himself. It was only Sanji. And to me, that affects Nami's growth. It just doesn't help Nami in any sort of way, right? Because at the end of the day, Nami was going to forgive Jinbei. It just felt a little too extra, and Sanji just imposed himself on that situation. He definitely had, Nami's feelings in mind when he was doing it, and he literally thought that he was doing the right thing by saying that. But at the same time, you have to allow the person who's been the most affected by it be the one to grow and bring that resolve out without your help. That's how you allow people to grow. If people just allow everyone else to defend them, you're not going to get that growth out of that person. That person's just going to rely on you more, which is not what you want, right? And that's why it's just his overbearing and him trying to do everything to always be like this protective white knight to her doesn't help Nami's growth as a character, and it doesn't fit how I view shipping. How I view how the two characters can bond more, emotionally, right? And can connect more. It just doesn't fit, and that's one of the reasons why. The way Sanji is a little overbearing just harms him more than it helps, right? I appreciate him saving Nami whenever Nami, needs help. But he doesn't need to do it all the time. A lot of relationships are broken up because one of the partners is a little overbearing. It can become too much, right? And it doesn't fit Nami's character of representing that joy of freedom that you get after being, ensnared and captured for so long, thinking that you didn't have freedom, right? And allowing her to continue growing that freedom and allowing her to make, the decisions herself, it just harms her, right? At least that is how I view that entire sequence. Is how I view that entire scene, right? But it's really one of the bigger reasons why I don't like Sanji and Nami as a ship, because there's not enough emotional growth and connection between them that really goes to the point of like it being reciprocal. Sanji clearly loves Nami, right? You could make an argument whether or not he actually loves her as much as any other female character, but I think because of their, much closer connection and much closer bond, he probably has more heightened feelings for Nami than other female characters, right? But Nami hasn't shown that. And in fact, there's moments in the story where like Sanji confesses his love to her and she just ignores those confessions of love. Like in Water 7, when he wrote an entire love letter to her, she just skimmed through all of that and called it just like some dumb love letter before she finally got to the important information that, she wanted to hear, which was Robin's situation, right? That doesn't help the ship at all, in my view. It just really doesn't. Like at all. One of the characters just completely ignores your like feelings or like your intentions of like romance with them. Like she just completely ignores them, right? I did like what they did, or what Oda did in Water 7. Not Water 7, Enies Lobby, right? After Sanji comes down, he talks about how like he cannot fight Khalifa because he has his code of honor, his man code, right? And that is something that Nami respects. Nami likes that part of him, that chivalrous part that really that showcases how much she does respect him about it, right? She respects that part about him. But then Oda adds a gag. And this is a constant thing that happens. Anytime there could have been a genuine connection, a genuine emotional growth with the ship, Oda, for some strange reason, adds a gag or showcases something that's a little off. Another example will be in Elbath, right? When Sanji was carrying Nami bridal style to get down from like a long height, that could have been a great moment for everybody to showcase that, Sanji Nami, that's a big piece of evidence. That's huge. But if you look closely at the goddamn panel, she looks disgusted because he literally says something weird. There's a gag there. Why? Why does Oda put that there? And that's why I can't ship them, because that Oda does this constantly. Right? There's an interview he had with the creator of Detective Conan where they talk about romance and how like the creator of Detective Conan really does a great job at the romance writing between his characters, while Oda says that he's not confident enough for that. But he believes that the unrequited love, where like only one side is in love with another character, that's great for him, right? To write. It's much easier for him to write because at the end of the day, there's going to be nothing there. Because he can use it as a gag. He can use it as a comedic purpose. It's very similar to how he is writing Luffy Hancock. And voila, I don't ship those two ships because they just do not fit each other in the way that I feel a ship should. Right? You can disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. It's just this is how I view these two. How I view this ship specifically. These two ships specifically. Where like there's not enough of that emotional growth, that emotional connection that you get. I could literally give you more reasons for that emotional connection that I'm talking about with Luffy and Nami, but I'm not going to do that because this is, it'll be unfair, right? But that's my point. That's why I cannot ship them because it goes against how I view ships. You can view ships differently. At the end of the day, everyone ships differently, and you are more than welcome to ship in any way. But that's part of it. That's just part of like why I don't like that ship in general, right? And it's just like you need that emotional growth. You need that emotional connection. You need to have the characters bring out the best out of each other. To me, that's what makes a great ship. When you are able to bond with somebody, grow, and allow yourself, for each character to grow because of the other, it's beautiful. That's how relationships should work. That's just how I think a relationship should be viewed as. I don't see that with Sanji and Nami at all. I really do not. So, that's just like... And it's frustrating because it's just like... Yeah, it could definitely be something there, but Oda doesn't really take it as seriously as people think he does. Like I mentioned, he adds gags to like those emotional moments that like could really be huge for the ship, right? It's like, I don't know. It's like the scene in WCI, right? Oda had the perfect opportunity, the perfect chance to allow Nami to tell Luffy at that point in time, right, that what Sanji's saying, what Sanji's doing, he's not in his right mind, which he isn't, right? She understands that, but she chose Luffy, her captain, over Sanji. She slapped him because Sanji hurt Luffy. She chose someone else over Sanji, right? In a serious moment where you could have had a moment where like Nami would have believed Sanji, in terms of this entire sequence, and not slap it and be like, try to find a way for Nami to like reconnect them, like, or just try to stop them from hurting each other, right? You definitely could have done that, but he didn't. He gave Nami a choice, and she chose to stay with Luffy over going or like telling Sanji that she understands it. Like, she understood that entire moment, that the heat of the moment, but she still chose someone else over him. To me, that's like something that I just don't think works for a ship, right? Think like it just overall, I don't like how their dynamic, their connection doesn't fit the way I view shipping, and it doesn't fit the emotional growth that I want to see between characters that I ship, which is they brings out the best out of the characters. The person brings out the best, because at the end of the day, when you're in a relationship, when you fall in love with somebody, you want the best for them. You want them to be strong. You want them to be confident. You want to be the person that brings out the best out of them. I do not see that with Sanji and Nami. Or at least I don't see it as much as I do with like Luffy and Nami, that I enjoy, that I think is a more well-rounded ship, in my own personal opinion. I just do not see that with Sanji and Nami. And at the end of the day, you can disagree with me. I'm not here to like change your mind at all. That's not the point. That's not the point. Like I mentioned before, you can disagree with me. This is just my reasoning as to why I don't ship Sanji and Nami. Right? You are absolutely in your right to ship Sanji and Nami if you wish. I just do not. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully at least I gave you at least some sort of insight why I don't ship them. Right? I don't see at all any way that someone can convince me otherwise that they can be the much better ship that Oda could go for. I just honestly do not see that at all, right? But who knows? Oda could do whatever the hell he wants at the end of the day. If Sanji Nami somehow, in my own personal opinion, somehow becomes canon, I guess I was mistaken at the end of the day. That at the end of the day, Oda was really trying something there. But I personally don't see it, and it's based off everything else, the way he writes romances in his story. Oden Toki, Kumagini, right now in Elbaf, Harold and Ida, right? I just personally don't see that, and I view that. I see the patterns that he does, and that's how I decide how I ship things, right? How I view relationships between characters. The emotional growth, bringing out the best out of each other, you know, the emotional connection, and the patterns that like the writer showcases in his story, specifically how he writes romances. Those are all things that I take into account when I choose who I want to ship or who I believe would be the canon ship at the end of whatever story I'm consuming. But again, you're more than welcome to disagree with me. And we'll see what Oda decides to do. Maybe he doesn't do any ship at all, and and at the end of the day, my analysis were just something that I really wanted to believe. It just didn't come true. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.